obviously we've had the major announced. It's there, it's happening. We already announced it over on Deserto, and it's going to be run by Blast, and it's going to be in Paris. It got announced by Macron, and everyone's wanking off about it. So let's start with some sort of, I don't know, sanity to counter it. So first things first, it's good Blast has a major after years of like intimating they wanted one and not pitching for it and letting everyone in public post. Blast should get the next major, even though they never submitted for it up until this point. I'm glad anyway. I find Blast to be like a really weird company in esports terms because they put on a fantastic product, but they're in terms of production and the way it looks and the way a broadcast runs. But unfortunately, they also have like terrible formats at most of their events. And it feels like, much like ESL Pro League is designed to be overly long, you know, because the ESL want to occupy as much of the calendar as possible. It feels like Blast are falling that trap a little bit as well. And they're kind of making these stupid events where it's like you have 5 chances to fucking qualify. You play a series of totally meaningless seeding games, best of ones. You know, it's like, I really don't like their format. But overall, it's a good product. Overall, they've been one of the few successful startups. I mean, if you want to talk about successful esports startups, it's a real short list, you know, like you've got Face It, right? And obviously they're owned by the, you know, evil empire now. And you've got Blast and probably like 1 or 2 that don't immediately spring to mind, but you know, it ain't many. So I'm glad Blast got a major. I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do. But why don't we have a look at the announcement?
Bravo à tous parce que vous êtes une fois encore, il y a quelques mois, lorsque le tout premier major de les premiers Trackmania Games. Et surtout, on va mobiliser tout le monde pour que, autour des Jeux Olympiques, l'e-sport soit pleinement mobilisé, que vous toutes et tous soyez aussi des acteurs à plein. Mais avec ces Trackmania Games, on aura des champions venus du monde entier qui seront en France, à Paris, pour cette compétition. Voilà les 2 petits messages que je voulais vous passer en 2 minutes. Merci et bravo, je compte sur vous ce soir, comme d'habitude. Et 2023-2024, la France sera au rendez-vous. Bonne soirée à tous.
Bonsoir, Macron, bonsoir. Yeah, you noticed it was in French, wasn't it? But that is him. He was doing a little announcement for a charity event called Z'Event, because the French say Z, don't they? And obviously in there he was talking about, yeah, Blast, we're also going to have the major here in France. Now, I tweeted this out, but I want to commit it to video in some form. I hope Nell, everyone's favourite French esports journalist, is going to get right on the case, because from what I'm told, and I'm just an ignorant, you know, I'm just a moron when it comes to, like, geopolitics, and certainly I can't hold a candle to Nell's brain when it comes to this stuff. But I'm certainly hoping that he notices the little secret nod to Vladimir Putin in this. And I do find it concerning because I think Macron just had a meeting with Putin recently, and then now he's promoting an event with a letter Z in it. Now, you'll remember when Shiro had a completely benign squiggle signature under his name, something he'd had under his name from before the invasion of Ukraine. Nell was on the case. Nell made absolutely certain that everybody knew what Shiro was really trying to do was signal support for Putin in order to make money from Russian people who also wanted to support Putin when the stickers went on sale. Nell absolutely nailed that investigation incredibly, and even though there were some minor details, like the guy who done the signature was Ukrainian himself, it's just little things, and they'd been done months before Ukraine was invaded as well. Just, you know, listen, Nell knows these things, and so I'm hoping he can put together the pieces of this, because Macron meeting Putin, you know, energy crisis looming in Europe because of our sanctions against Russia, meaning, you know, thousands, tens of thousands of people will probably freeze to death, mainly the elderly, the infirm, the vulnerable, children in poor environments. You know, we've committed to that in, you know, to virtue signal on Twitter, it seems. But anyway, you know, look, you put all this together and now he's got a letter Z in his tweet? Well, guys, like, you know, Nell better get on this and cancel Macron. Get right on it, I say. So anyway, let me tell you another little funny Funny story. Obviously, Louis Mira, a fantastic journalist who I work with at Deserto, was the guy who broke the story. What actually happened was we broke it days before the announcement. But because Blast wanted Macron to announce it, and that was all part of their little marketing plan, they actually were trying to sort of pressure us into not running the story. They were saying, hey, listen, if you don't run this story, we'll give you an interview with someone that is going to be doing about 20 interviews once the event goes live. You know, like, oh, we'll stop right there, Mr. Blast, sir. What a fucking joke. So anyway, you know, if you're going to come to the table and try and bargain and you want a bit of quid pro quo, you got to have a quid. You know what I mean? Simple as that. So, yeah, ridiculous. But anyway, they did a sort of accompanying press release announced on September the 11th. Blast TV Major, and you'll notice now it's Blast.tv. We'll come to that in a second. Blast.tv Major 2023, set to be the first CSGO Major in France. The Blast.tv Major will take place in May 2023. It will be the first CSGO Major to take place in France. They've repeated the headline there. This announcement follows on from French President Emmanuel Macron's comments back in April this year, where he stated the desire for France to host leading esports events, such as the Counter-Strike Major in the future, and become the country of video games. Now, actually, I'm a little bit disappointed in myself, and you should all be disappointed in yourself, because my assumption was when Blast were clearly going to get the first major of next year, my assumption would be it would, you know, it would be in Denmark. Makes sense. That's where they do all their events. It's where their infrastructure is. But of course, in April, or whereabouts it was, there was all those esports wankers went to meet Macron, didn't they? All the esports wankers. You saw them on Twitter saying, I've just met Macron. By the way, can I, you know, and this is linked to a topic that's going to come up time and time again over the course of today's stream. I would never go and meet these greasy, odious politicians. You have to understand, when I was the first esports host to go and do mainstream American television, I had an opportunity to meet a lot of motherfuckers, like, for real. They would come in and they would say, like, do you want to meet this guy? Do you want to meet this guy? You know, CNN guys were around. I had friends in the CNN offices, right? There was opportunities to, like, meet prominent figures. But you know what? I only ever indulged myself on meeting people who I thought were just objectively decent people. I don't want to fawn over politicians. In fact, I always get super fucking weirded out when politicians come into esports to fucking promote themselves, particularly around elections. And keep in mind, Macron is one of the most reviled French presidents. If his opposition wasn't someone as odious as Le Pen, Macron would be out. We'll talk about Macron in a bit. But anyway, these motherfuckers in their suits taking the manila envelopes, these corrupt fucking entities that just ruin our planet and are a blight on human existence, just within a gaming context. You know, they fucking spend, 300 days out of a year saying gaming's bad, gaming's addictive, gaming corrupts the youth, gaming's not a worthwhile pursuit, gaming's unhealthy, gaming creates school shooters. They do all of this when they have to pander to the religious right or whoever or the newspapers and throw out cheap sound bites, and then, oh wait, I can have an event that might make young voters think I'm cool, so I'll just come out now and pretend I liked esports all along. He'll be cunting gaming off just like they all do as soon as this event's fucking finished. As soon as Paris has pocketed the cash, as soon as he's converted a bunch of people. Hey, look, Macron's in a Vitality hoodie. He is cool now. I will vote for him no matter what in every election because I'm susceptible to bullshit. These people are garbage, and it pains me. It pains me to see a top thread on Reddit going, wow, Macron's talking about esports. We've made it, guys. Like, fuck me. If that's the yardstick of success, count me all the fucking way out. Macron is a cunt. He is a cunt. I can't explain it any clearer to you. If there's any aspirational element in your life to think Macron's a good human being, he's absolutely not a good human being by any metric. He's also a creepy fucking weirdo that married his fucking French teacher, right? Like, I mean, you know, deconstruct that in your brain, like what the fuck's going on there. By the way, somebody brought that up on Reddit, and I think there was a reply to it. I think it was Nicola Naum's GIMP, the incredible Reddit account that we definitely spawned from BTN. And somebody replied going, surely the teacher is the weirdo. All right then, fine. Got him. Macron is this new wave of grinning authoritarian, garbage that people buy into in the interests of appearing like good people. You can't vote for the alternatives, guys. They're the baddies. Meet the goodies. And this is how you end up with Trudeau's and Macron's and people that actually don't really care about your freedom, about making your life better. They do all the opposite of the things they say when they're going to get in. Like President Blackface in Canada. No, we love the indigenous people. Now we will club the protesters half to death as we build a pipeline through the stolen lands we promised to give back. Yeah, this is all fine, guys. These are the good guys, all right? You're going to have to get it in your head eventually, and I know most of my audience know it, but, when I'm Clinton, listen, if you keep voting for the lesser of two evils, you will always be voting for evil. Till you get that into your brains, the world will remain fucked. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's that simple. There's no more. You can process that however you want. Anyway, enough of that. We'll save that for the meeting at the docks on Wednesday. Macron, everyone's favourite esports hero. He wears a Vitality hoodie. He's a good guy now. The Blast.tv major will be France's first ever Counter-Strike major. Blast's first time hosting one of the most watched and loved esports events in the world. Robbie Dueck, CEO for Blast, said, Blast has always had an ambition and dream to be involved in a major, an event that is rightly viewed as the pinnacle of esports and competitive gaming. We've been watching and waiting for the right moment to deliver an unforgettable major. The time is now with the Blast.tv Major 2023. Over the last few years, we've been working hard to deliver the best esports entertainment on the planet, and more recently investing in a digital platform that will allow fans to get even closer to these experiences. Paris is the world-class location to host the tournament and will precede another high-profile international event in the 2024 Paris Olympics and Paralympics. Next year marks 10 years of majors, and we are highly confident of marking this occasion by delivering the greatest major to date for CSGO fans to experience and enjoy. We will be working closely with Valve to ensure we meet and exceed the community's expectations and deliver an incredible event. The Blast TV Major joins a list of high-profile international events taking place in France over the next few years, alongside the 2023 Rugby World Cup, the 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games in Paris, and the 2025 Rugby League World Cup. It gives the dates. Here's some things flying around with the French colours. Again, this is so esports. It's the anniversary of September the 11th, and you have posted some artwork of things flying around a national landmark. I wonder if somebody could have foreseen that this would be perhaps a little bit tasteless and maybe potentially inappropriate. I don't know. What do I know about optics? I'm Richard Lewis. He says terrible things on Twitter. Could literally do your job for Blast. Please just make me the PR guy. I'll do it for free. Things like this won't happen. So anyway, let's talk about Paris. Let's talk about it, where it's being hosted. Some overall thoughts. France has made a stellar contribution to the history of Counter-Strike, particularly in Source and very early on in CSGO. I absolutely have no issues with France being selected as a country. You can argue that there were others in the pecking order. There's actually a compelling argument to say Denmark should get one before France. But you have to remember, the way Valve think about these things, they don't really care about, does a country deserve a major or not? They don't think about it in those terms. They just want you to put together, here's a cool proposal, here's a place, and they'll prioritize places that haven't done it before. Here's a really cool city, here's why we can do an event there, and here's why it'll be really, really good. And the Valve look at it and they go, yeah, okay, cool. It's like, for example, when we pitched in E-League for Atlanta, Atlanta, you're not thinking esports, when you think of Atlanta, you're thinking like fucking hip hop, right? And, some other things. But, not esports. It doesn't have a big reputation there. But the Fox's Theatre was such a cool venue. Turner was obviously based in Atlanta. And so Valve liked that and gave us the thumbs up. In we went. I also saw, I think it was Maniac tweet that RPK should bring out the trophy here. Absolutely co-sign that for what it's worth. I've known Letank, or Zitank, as I guess he would have to be in Macron's eyes. I've known him a long, long time. He is a fantastic competitor, was one of the best players, was the best rifler in the world for many years in Source, had a pretty stellar career in CSGO across two instances. Remember, he retired and came back, and, he went away to be a mechanic, and then because he's really good with that shit, and then he came back. So, yeah, I absolutely sign on that. I think RPK bringing out the trophy makes sense. I can't really think of any better choices. I saw people saying maybe Kenny S could do it. I don't know how genuine that is as a suggestion, because people were saying, well, Kenny S is more popular than RPK. Yes, this is undoubtedly true, but Kenny S is still technically playing. He hasn't retired. He hasn't announced his retirement. RPK has absolutely announced his final retirement and will not be coming back. So I think it's a nice gesture that, RPK gets it. I think everybody as well that's followed like esports in France, I think who RPK is, even if Kenny S is the more popular of the two. So it should be RPK, I feel. Anyway, that's got nothing to do with anything. Now, let me just tell you some things. If you've been in esports a while, as you may or may not know, I have been to some terrible esports events, but I think all the worst ones were in France, and particularly the worst ones I went to were in Paris. Paris is like a weird city. It has a reputation it doesn't deserve. It's kind of like New York in that sense. Like everyone from New York says like, oh, New York's amazing. And then you get there and you go, no, this sucks. It's like, really, this is gross, actually. This is like really bad. Paris is a little bit like that. Paris has got like some infrastructural issues in the sense that, some things are a little bit dilapidated. The metro is a nightmare these days, particularly in the city. It's like got that overcrowded feel to it, and a lot of tourists and stuff. And I get the impression that they're trying to have a big push on getting everything rebuilt, getting everything, nice and neat and tidy, because obviously they're going to be hosting all these big sporting events. That's something that's very typical to esports. Esports events get slapped in the middle of big sporting events, you'll notice. I don't know quite why that is, although I've always suspected it's to do with money. It's to do with who's lobbying for it, who owns a piece of what businesses, keeping the venues ticking over between larger, more prestigious sporting events. I'm always a little bit cynical of it, in the same way when we always get put on at a Gamescom, or there's an esports tournament at a large gaming convention. It's oh yeah, we're sort of doing this to save money, and it's symbiotic. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but I would say someone somewhere's either saving money or making money, and that's why France has been chosen. But anyway, let me tell you about the next thing, because a lot of people have brought this up. Now, Macron said he wants to do a CSGO major, a TI, the international for Dota, and Worlds for League of Legends, all in France. And people are like, wow, this is really good. But what people don't realize is, if that does happen, they will all be cast in French live at the event. This is something that I've seen a lot of people seem to be a bit confused about, because people are going, oh, wow, I must get my tickets to go. And if you think you're going to see, I don't know, Henry's back now, isn't he? The fucking bottom fell out of his mushrooms. So Henry's back. But, if you think you're going to see Henry G or Machine or Sponge, Harry, Hugo, Launder, Scrawny, you think you're going to see these guys, Anders, Moses, I'll say all of my friends are included. If you think you're going to see any of those guys cast an epic moment in a big 10,000 seat stadium in France, no, you're not going to see that, because it flies contrary to what is known as the two bon law. Now, my French pronunciation is terrible, but also, I don't speak French. I don't speak a lick of it. I learnt German, the superior language and one that's more historically relevant to my people. So this is called the Toubon Law, and the Toubon Law was signed in because if you know the French, Richard's xenophobic streams. Now listen, I got nothing against y'all. France would be like a wicked country if it just had like politeness and customer service. As soon as they discover those two things, I might even consider going back there. Like, once you've cracked, it's like a civilization, like tech tree, and it's like, as soon as you discover customer service, the concept that the customer is always right, once they get that assimilated into their, ideas moving forward, it'll be really, really pleasant. As things stand, if you go there and you're British, particularly if you're British and therefore are the old enemy from all those wars historically, which the French people definitely are still upset about, they don't want you to speak English to them. They don't like it. Now, obviously, I'm talking in generalities. It varies from place to place. Parisians, I found, like a lot of big city folk, are particularly snooty about the culture, but I will say overall I like a lot of the ideas that France have. Like, for example, if you go to smaller towns and smaller cities, you won't see this like homogenous wall of American brands that you see in like a British high street. The French are like, no, fuck that, we don't want that. You still have like, all mom and pop stores, local owned businesses, local owned restaurants. Now Macron's COVID restrictions fucking killed a lot of them off, but because France had some of the most overzealous, let's say, COVID restrictions across Europe. Listen, I was a lockdown guy. I was all for it. I was all for flattening the curve. 18 months down the road, I don't know. Like, maybe shutting down people's businesses isn't a good idea at that point. But whatever, we won't get into the great COVID talks. It just upsets everyone. Everyone loses their mind. I like, the fact that there's a rejection of that kind of like American corporatism, and the French definitely are passionate about preserving their culture in a way that not a lot of countries are. A lot of countries have just sort of like surrendered, to the idea that, listen, if we're European, everything's the same. If we're in a global economy, we import cultural elements from other places, and they might supersede some of our own traditional, cultural aspects, like types of food, types of music, and shops, and just things like that, restaurants. So anyway, the French have always had a bee in their bonnet about preserving their language, because when you get taught about it, it's like, oh, French is the language of diplomacy. French is this incredibly important and prestigious language to learn, and I'm like, who actually fucking speaks it? Because I don't even count the Canadians as speaking French. They butcher that shit. Even I can tell that what my British is. Y'all need to stop. Y'all need to give up on that stuff. Because I think the only group of people that the French dislike more than the British is probably French Canadians. And that doesn't help. It's ridiculous. So anyway, they want to preserve the language at all costs, and as a result, there have been a number of things that have come in, into actual law to ensure this end. And the Toubon Law is one of them. I'll read it to you because, again, on Reddit, a lot of people seem to be confused, and they're like going, "Oh no, surely there can be a workaround, or surely there can be an exception." It's like the Toubon Law is pretty expansive, and so the Toubon Law is a law it was signed in 1984. Is a law of the French government mandating the use of French language in official government publications, in all advertisements, in all workplaces, in commercial contracts, in some of the commercial communication contexts, in all government financed schools, and some other contexts. And some of those other contexts do include, if you do a live event and there's commentary at that live event, that commentary has to cater to a French audience. It has to be a French-speaking, friendly broadcast, or whatever you want to call it. The law does not concern private, non-commercial communications, because I saw some people, I think somebody quoted this, and I think they got the idea that an esports event would be non-commercial. It's certainly private, but it's not non-commercial. People will be paying money for tickets. People will be buying merchandise, so it's a very much commercial venture. Such as non-commercial web publications by private bodies, it does not concern books, films, public speeches, and other forms of communications not constituting commercial activity. However, the law mandates the use of the French language in all broadcast audiovisual programs, with exceptions for musical works and original version films. So, for example, if I want to show 2001 on an IMAX in Paris, I don't have to run the French dub, although chances are you probably would anyway. Broadcast musical works are subject to quota rules under a related law whereby a minimum percentage of the songs on radio and television must be in the French language. See, this is why it's called the Toubon Law, because it was Jacques Toubon, Minister of Culture, blah, blah. So there's not going to be any getting around it. And people need to consider that. Like, I don't think it's as big a deal. There is going to be a broadcast, obviously. People are going to get, an English broadcast, an English stream. And honestly, what's interesting is a lot of people have complained about this. Not so much Rio, which, remember, that's the next major. That's round the corner. We're going to have that very soon. And Rio is going to be Portuguese-speaking commentators in the stadium as well. It's going to be an overwhelmingly Brazilian audience, so it's going to be Portuguese speakers, and there's going to be either a remote broadcast or they're going to be doing it in a studio from behind the thing. I don't know what the plans are. It's ESL, so ESL love these remote broadcasts. If you've been enjoying Pro League and all the tech problems they're having from having an analysis desk in Katowice and the casters in Malta with the players, if you've been enjoying all of that, you'll probably get more of that for this major. Spoiler, because that's just who they are. So that's what's going to be happening. But, I think there's an argument to be made. Listen, I would love it if it was, English speaking and we were breaking down that, barrier, the international barriers, because English is the language, the international language. But realistically, in countries where English is very much people's secondary, sometimes even tertiary language, depending on, what region you're in, I think you sort of have to cater for the people that are buying tickets. And if the best thing to do is to have French, or wherever it is, native speakers doing the commentary, you sort of have to do it. And also, it will serve the purpose of, you are going to see some commentators who have never had the chance to commentate in the stadium before, certainly not one of this size, actually commentate to a crowd in a stadium in their home country, in their native tongue. That's kind of cool. You have to sort of like decouple yourself from thinking about it, what you would watch if you were at home on a Twitch stream. So anyway, the Toubon Law, as far as I can tell, and I'm not French, and I'm not a lawyer, so in other words, why the fuck am I even talking about this? Good point. I think it's one of those things, I don't think there's any flex on it. I don't think Macron can swoop in and say, oh yeah, we'll do it in English this time. I don't think he can. Although, as we know, Macron is not a respecter of laws, is he? Yeah, you may have noticed that during the Yellow Vest protests, where police deliberately fired tear gas canisters into people's eyes, while Macron said absolutely nothing about it. But don't worry, it's all good. Macron's a cool guy. Very, very, very cool guy. So anyway, so there's that. The other thing that seemed to worry people was this talk about Blast TV. Blast TV will be the home of 2023 France Major, where fans can get closer to the action than ever before. Innovative and fan-first viewing features will allow fans to tailor their viewing experience, relive key and exciting moments, and impact the action unfolding before their eyes. And everybody went, oh no, Blast are going to put it on their own exclusive platform, and we've lost everything, and it's bad now, and no, what are we gonna do? No. But that's not what's happening. People don't need to worry about that. Blast.tv is simply going to be like a landing page, from as far as I can tell. It's going to be a series of embedded YouTube streams, which I imagine for the major will all scale up to 4K, because YouTube can do that and Twitch can't, because YouTube always had better tech, which is why when they were actually paying for esports content, y'all shouldn't have rejected them, because you like PogChamp. Where's your PogChamp now? He's a lizard now, isn't he? So anyway, I think that's all it's going to be, and there'll probably be some integrated features. Now, I remember, Richard, you keep bringing up E-League. It was 6 years ago. Yeah, but it was my peak, wasn't it? I'm washed now, aren't I? I'm washed. So, just let me talk about the glory days when things were good, right? And I wasn't washed. Because I'm clinging on to relevance here, guys. Desperate. We had something similar called Game Command, when we did E-League, and we had Game Command available for the E-League majors. And it wasn't in place of a Twitch stream. It was just a supplemental little thing. Game Command was really, really good tech, and it's a shame more people didn't get into it. It enabled you to like watch the game from the viewpoint of like every player. It had like, I think it had like replay capability, which obviously Twitch didn't. So, you know, it would, like YouTube does now, but we were doing it in like Game Command. And there was a bunch of other features with it, like, you know, improved maps and overlays and stuff. And it was just like, it was like a really, really, really good bit of tech that didn't get the attention or love it deserved. The guy that made that, friend of mine called Derek Moore, fantastic guy, just a really talented dude. We did like an E-League get-together for a university course, not my university, Christina Alejandre's university. We did like an E-League retrospective, and everybody came back together, all the people that had worked on the broadcast. I was representing the broadcast talent, and Derek Moore was there. He works for the PGA Golf Tour now. You know, I'm so happy that he's like continued to like, you know, work, because he was like a genius. He was like a godhead guy, super cool at content, you know, super cool at like web design and making just cool like little bits of tech to enhance broadcasts. And he's doing that now for the PGA Golf. So if you like golf, you've probably seen some of Derek's work. He's a legend. Anyway, Game Command was super cool, and I imagine Blast.tv will just be a sort of similar version of that. So I don't think anybody needs to worry. From what I understand, and don't quote me on this, but I don't think Valve would allow a tournament organizer to put a broadcast exclusively on their own platform. I just don't think that would happen. Now, obviously, it could. It might be something Valve are willing to do. We know certainly they would never let that happen to Dota 2, but CSGO, they do all kinds of weird shit because, you know, we're number 2 in the, you know, favorite kids, as we established last stream when everyone was crying over at Dota 2 because my battle pass. Yeah, it's nothing to worry about. And you never know, it might integrate with some sort of drops or giveaways. There might be some sort of reason to watch it on Blast TV. You know, I imagine that will certainly be discussed because everyone wants to break viewership records when they get the major. So, you know, watch this space. I'm sure they'll announce something about that in the not too distant future. Obviously, a major, you know, in France, I think people are gonna, you know, there'll be some issues for sure. There's gonna be a lot of people in the city around that time. You know, it's gonna be pretty fucking crowded. Travel's gonna be a pain in the balls. If you ever tried to get around in taxis in Paris, you know what I'm talking about. I've certainly had to do that. Probably there should be some sort of like city primer put out. But, you know, for the French people who already live there and French speakers, I think you're going to get a really good event. And wherever they do the studio broadcast from, it might not be in France itself. They might do the English-speaking studio broadcast from Denmark. Again, we'll find out nearer the time. Because I hate to break it to you guys, remote desks and remote broadcasts, they're not going anywhere. We gave up way too much during the pandemic in what we were willing to tolerate on a broadcast. And now all these companies are like, well, listen, it looks essentially the same. The only difference is the people on the broadcast don't get to be at the event and soak up the atmosphere and get all those little extra tidbits of information you would get. And no one really gives a fuck about that. Oh, yes. And of course, how could I forget? Thanks for reminding me, Anto Jesus in the chat. You will also have to understand, if you are going to this event and you are traveling to it, you are going to have to fly into Charles de Gaulle Airport. Now, Charles de Gaulle Airport, I've tweeted about it in the past. I called it the Somalia of airports, international airports. Why? Because it is a lawless place. Anything goes there. And by that, I mean, it's the only airport I've ever been to in the world where the times for flights are just recommendations. That's all they are. There's a workers' strike there like once a week. Like, so sometimes you just don't get your bags or you don't get on a plane, or it is absolute garbage. Like, people are not ready for Charles de Gaulle. It is hands down the world. Like, put it this way, I've flown all over the world, been to almost every continent, you know. Let me tell you, Charles de Gaulle Airport, hands down the worst airport I've been to in my life. And I would say to anybody, if you're on a tight schedule, if you've only got 1 or 2 days off work either side of the major, might not even be worth the risk going, like for real, because you might just be like, well, flight's cancelled, so can't get back in time, lost my job, I'll see a major in French when I don't even speak it. So something to think about for sure. But in general, happy to see if they can get an event right in France. The Champions League went so well, didn't it? So, oh, you passive-aggressive cunt, Richard. Why are you like this? No, I'm sure it's going to be good. I'm sure it'll be different this time.
He's the man to do the damage. Oh! As he looks for another headshot!